Hey gang, Masada Ayub here for the Wilson Combat Channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm going to suggest you click on the subscribe button and that you kind of ring the notification bell that you'll find on your YouTube page. And also, if you scroll down below comments, you can sign up for the Wilson Combat newsletter. It'll keep you on top of a lot of good information that's timely. They've asked me today to talk about the Beretta 92. And if you're familiar with the Wilson Combat universe, you know it's not just 1911 country, it's also Beretta country. Bill Wilson bonded with the Beretta a long time ago, and you'll find probably in the links his discussion with, I believe, Ken Hackathorn explaining how and why he came to appreciate the 92 series Beretta, as so many of us in the business have. Okay, a lot of folks ask, what was the rationale of the switch to the Beretta and all that in the military and law enforcement, and even largely in the private sector? Well, military, more than anything else, it was ammunition compatibility. As late as the late 1940s, the U.S. government had looked at transitioning to 9mm Parabellum, 9mm NATO, same cartridge, because they were looking then at a European land war, and basically thousands of miles away from your manufacturing facilities and your supply lines, the ability to use the ammunition of your European allies was premium. You might prefer 45 over 9mm, but 3 magazines of 45 and you're out is not nearly as good a deal as all the 9mm that you can get from your allies that you're working with on their ground. In law enforcement, the big thing was firepower. A 16-shot 9mm was a quantum leap over a 6-shot revolver, and darn near twice the firepower of at that time, 7-round magazine in 1911. With the private citizen, interestingly, the private citizens tend to model their long gun choice, their rifle choices on what the military uses, but historically have modeled their concealed carry and even home defense guns largely on what domestic law enforcement uses. What the police were looking for, and the big thing that led to the traditional double action, that is double action first shot and self-cocking thereafter, was the fear of an unintended discharge. Any cop can tell you that you are vastly more likely to have to take someone at gunpoint than you are to have to shoot them. During the period of the transition and the height of the popularity of the traditional double action, it was just then coming into doctrine, you must always keep your finger off the trigger. If you look at the police manuals of the period, you'll see most of the cops holding their gun like this when they're taking someone at gunpoint, when they're in a ready position, etc. And increasing knowledge of human physiology showed that something like a startle response, something like this hand is closing the handcuffs and the officer's trying to do 2 jobs at once, this hand closes sympathetically and a shot is fired. It's a whole lot easier to happen with a cocked pistol than it is with a double action. The weight of the pull, and particularly the greater length of the pull, was seen as one fudge factor, one safety net to reduce the likelihood of that happening. When FBI went to the autos for a general issue as opposed to just FBI SWAT and the hostage rescue team in the late 1980s, they had considered the cocked and locked 1911 or the Browning high power that HRT had been using at the period. And they went with the double action on the rationale that the accidental, unintentional, negligent shootings were almost always the first shot in the gun. And the double action gave some safety net for that. Their rationale was after the first shot, if the agent is still shooting, he's probably in a gunfight, and we want that trigger to be as easy as possible to help him make accurate shots under stress. And frankly, it was hard to argue against. So that was the rationale, and essentially, the double action trigger is geared in law enforcement and for the private citizen, for whom it's also true they're much more likely to have to take a criminal at gunpoint than they are to have to shoot him. That longer, heavier pull was a good trade-off for safety without being too much of a trade-off on combat accuracy at high speed. And there are many people who still find that valid, as I do. So that's why the Beretta is kind of coming back. In fact, the whole traditional double action concept is kind of coming back, and that's the reason why. With Wilson, you've got basically two approaches. We have a couple of guns here that were customer guns that were sent in and modified to specification by Wilson Combat. And we have here three that are Wilson Combat production in cooperation with Beretta. Starting over here, this customer's gun began as a Beretta 92 FS, the commercial version of the M9 service pistol, but it's been modified to the G profile, the decock only. You'll see here when I press down on the decock lever, it will spring back up. And a shooter who doesn't use the manual safety when they're carrying doesn't want it to be able to go on inadvertently in a struggle for the gun or a malfunction clear manipulation or something like that. It's also unidex as opposed to ambidex. A lot of folks don't like the bulk of the extra lever over here of the ambidextrous safety or decock lever. This is something you don't see every day. A Wilsonized gun in the original FS series where the lever is both safety and decocker. This one was mine. I sent it into Wilson's. It began as a stainless Beretta Compact 92 FS. And they did the Wilson finish, they did the Wilson trigger, they did the much easier to manipulate Wilson magazine release, which is stiff enough that it does not accidentally release. Usually a concern with oversized mag releases, but because of the good human engineering, not on this one. One advantage you have with the Beretta pistol is a whole lot of us geezers transitioned from the 1911, which we ran cocked and locked using this type of thumb manipulation, and transitioning to the slide-mounted manual safety, many found awkward. Because it's spring-loaded, it's very easy to do with the Beretta pistol. And if you want to go from a 8 or 9 shot 45 to a 14, 18, or whatever shot double action, the Beretta was a particularly attractive transition, especially for someone who is accustomed to carrying a pistol on safe. That really does give a little bit of an extra margin of safety and a buffer zone if the bad guy ever gets the gun away from you. We have here are 3 different Wilson guns. These are all Wilson. They come from here built to spec. These are the Brigadiers. The longer barrel is the BrigTac, the tactical version, and the shorter is the Centurion, a little bit easier to carry, and some prefer the balance of the shorter gun as well. With the Vertec, you can see the back has been cut away, if you will, the large hump that you see in that area on the standard model. And for a lot of people, that gives a better, more 1911-like grip to barrel angle. And it also, if you look at my hand here, lets the web of the hand get in a little bit deeper and get you a little more into the trigger guard. You can see I'm almost right at the distal joint of the trigger. The reason that's important is if you have a long, heavy double action pull for your first shot, and we all agree the first shot is generally the most important, not the 15th, the more leverage you have, the better you can control the trigger. A little test you can do right here at home. Take your non-gun hand and turn it like this with the fingerprint away from you. Stiffen the finger and make it resistant. Make it like a 20-pound trigger. Come up with your actual trigger finger. If you start at the tip, you'll see how hard it is to pull back against that resistance. You may eventually overpower it, but it's going to be kind of a jerky movement. If you go to the often recommended contact point on the trigger for a short single action pull, the pad of the finger, which is generally described as the center of the whorl of the fingerprint. Stiffen up again, and you'll find you don't have a whole lot more leverage. But secrets of the ninja come right to here. It's what the old-time double-action revolver shooters call the power crease. It's the crease of the third digit here on the palmar surface of the finger. Stiffen up, get to there, and roll that sucker back. Feel how much more leverage that gives you getting the finger deeper in. That's why you're hearing so many of today's physiology-aware instructors telling you get more finger into the trigger. And this Vertec grip shape allows more trigger reach that allows you to get in there deeper. And that's probably, that and the altered grip angle, slightly less steep, are two of the big selling points of the Vertex style and the Beretta. Finally, we have here the Beretta that I carry most often. This is Wilson's Compact Carry 92G. Interesting personal story behind this one. When it came out, Combat Handguns magazine assigned me to write it up. Well, it had just been announced, and when I called Bill Wilson, he said, yeah, I'll tell you what, to get you one, we've got a lot of demand, let me give you mine. He sent the gun, loved the gun, gave it a rave review because it performed so superbly. And I said, Bill, I want to buy this gun. He said, okay. So I wound up with Bill Wilson's Wilson Combat. The thing has never failed me. It's never given me less than 300 out of 300, demonstrating a qualification shoot. The shorter butt, on some of my size, I don't have a whole lot of real estate front to back for concealing large group frame handguns. Just carries a little bit better for me. And for some reason, even though it's standard trigger reach, fits my hand just a little bit better. Where I came into the Beretta, each of us, has a different story to it. At first, it struck me as a big, awkward gun. When I started working with it, late 1980s, the U.S. Army adopted our shooting system, Stress Fire, and folded it into their combat pistol craft doctrine. It appears in the manual of the period FM-235. They brought me down to Fort Benning, Georgia, the Central Marksmanship Training Unit for U.S. Army. And of course, they were issuing the M9, so I went out and bought a Beretta rather than taking one off their rack. I wanted something I could take back to the hotel with me at night as a personal gun. And just in the gun shop, I said, this compact just feels a little bit better. Got into the habit, really came to enjoy the gun. My older daughter in 1996 won High Woman at the National Tactical Invitational with my Beretta Compact. And of course, I gave her the gun after that. And I had kind of been in the market for another one, so this one has become kind of a personal pet. The reliability that we've seen in this gun in the institutional environment, major law enforcement agencies for many, many years carrying it with, LAPD with 8,000 to 10,000 officers as standard issue. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, during the period they were using traditional double action, went with the Beretta 92FS, mandated to be carried on safe. And they all had splendid luck with those guns, as did the military, except for one unfortunate bout with low-bit magazines from a third-party source. So the reliability, the extreme accuracy of these guns, a couple of my friends tell me I shoot the Beretta 92 better than anything else, guys I shoot with a lot and have to respect. And overall, that's what brought me to the Beretta. One advantage I have on this Wilson Compact Carry, as I get older, if you look at my right hand, you can see the effects of arthritis on the middle finger and particularly the thumb area. And I got to where it became difficult with range of movement to hit the mag release in its traditional position. The Beretta, like some other pistols, but it's pretty difficult to do on a 1911, though it can be done, allows you to simply flip the mag release to the opposite side. The original intent was to give you a mirror image magazine release for the left-handed shooter, but the benefit for the right-handed shooter is you can just come back with the trigger finger, hit it. It gives me a faster reload, particularly with the somewhat disabled thumb now. With your concern with that, was always my concern for left-handed shooters carrying right-handed guns, is if this is outside and you bump into something, let's say I was to stand up here and be bumped into a table or something, the magazine could release. With the Wilson release, that doesn't seem to happen. Okay, Bill Wilson knows his guns, and a whole lot of design and a whole lot of tactical thinking went into this one. So this is one reason this has become one of my pet guns that I carry a whole lot more than most of the others. As I said, the Beretta's made a great many friends. It's got a great history. And Wilson Combat is one reason for the renaissance of that gun's popularity among professionals and among new shooters. So if you haven't considered the Beretta in the past, take a look at it, and a Wilson Beretta is probably right up there at the top of the breed. Wish you luck, stay safe. I hope you subscribe to the Wilson channel. There's a whole lot of good stuff there, a treasure trove of experienced people with cumulative advice. Take care.